Hi, Mindy. How's it going?
Hi.
All right, everyone. Welcome back. Happy New Year. This is Take the Lead, Change the Game, a podcast for women leaders looking to deepen their knowledge and skills and find enjoyment in the process. We're powered by Safra Leadership. Safra Leadership is a cohort-based coaching experience designed to fuel courage and ignite impact among women professionals. I'm Lindsay Goldford Gray, and this is Mindy Gulati. We're the co-founders of Safra. Together, we bring a blend of leadership coaching, strategy, and lived experience to help women navigate challenges, seize opportunities, and lead with confidence. As the new year begins, the pressure to get everything right can be overwhelming. In this episode, we're unpacking the idea of progress over perfection, why waiting for the perfect moment to plan or version of yourself often keeps you stuck, and how small, consistent steps lead to real growth. We'll talk about the fear of starting, the habits that quietly move the needle, and how redefining success can make this year more sustainable and more fulfilling than ever. Whether you're setting goals, starting something new, or picking up where you left off, this conversation will help you move forward without burning out. So, welcome, and Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year. Excited to be back. We had a nice break, but I'm excited to be back with you all, with you, Lindsay, and with our audience to have another great year of getting things done and making progress without being saddled with the perfectionist tendencies. So excited to chat about that today.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like, progress over perfection, this theme is super relevant right now as everyone is making New Year's resolutions or starting New Year's resolutions. I feel like there's a lot of pressure there. And also people, I'm not totally sure about the statistics, but I know the vast majority of New Year's resolutions die by the end of, I think, January. And so I think a lot of that is due to this whole idea of like, we have to be perfect and we're going to go for it, and really holding ourselves to a standard that is not achievable and also like doesn't reward us for making significant progress in our lives.
Yeah. And, I think always at the end of something and the beginning of something new. So whether it's a new year or a new job or whatever sort of phases of life you have, it's really fun and awesome to set new goals and to, set a new course. And I love doing that stuff, but
obviously we do. We did a whole series on it.
Yeah, obviously. And I'm just that kind of person. However, I always go back to like, don't let perfection get in the way of progress.
Yeah.
And I think we've all heard this term, this phrase along the way. Actually, one of my colleagues, his name is Jerry Cavalluzzi. He's probably one of the funnest, most interesting lawyers I know. He says it like maybe at least every other meeting that he has at his organization, which is let's make progress. Let's not wait for the perfection. I think it's a reminder to himself, and it's a reminder to everyone of like, hey, we're in these meetings. They're consequential, but we don't need to be solving everything, and we need to be careful that we don't get in our own way. So
yeah, I mean, otherwise, if we bite off more than we can chew or strive for something that's not attainable, I mean, we're just gonna end up like all of it's gonna go, go to waste, or we're gonna have a really, really difficult time moving forward.
Yeah.
In terms of like what perfectionism looks like, I mean, Mindy, can you give us some ideas about like how does that play out in real life?
Yeah, so perfectionism, I think sometimes we think of perfectionism as like the goal is to like have some big high standard, like I'm going to do this perfectly. But that's not really what perfectionism is. Perfectionism is actually a really negative for most of us, and probably all of us. It means like over planning. So again, like, oh, I'm going to reach these goals and I'm going to do all these 7 things this month. That really sets you up for failure. It's also perfectionism we know can lead to you to procrastinate until conditions are right or exactly perfect.
Yeah.
And perfectionism, I think, and a lot of the research and a lot of what we've talked about, Lindsay, is really like a fear of failure. So you set all these conditions that have to be met before you get started or before you go after something, because you're actually just really scared to fail. And so fear of failure is really what perfectionism looks like, is when you are not afraid to fail. You don't set this big giant goal or this unachievable thing. You start setting achievable things. And so because you're like, yeah, I may fail, but I can get back up, or I'm doing off little pieces at a time. And so I do think it's important to confront, the failure part of this, and also sort of think about your own ways of thinking about perfectionism. I'll say, Lindsay, before I want you to chat a little bit about the fear of failure, but the one thing I would say is there's some of us who grew up like feeling like we had to be perfect. So this conversation is not just like about work or career. Like it can be very rooted in your family systems. It can be very rooted in your history. And I'm a firstborn daughter.
Mm-hmm.
If you know about firstborn daughters, there's all these funny analogies about them and memes and things. But I felt like I did have to be perfect. I feel like I had to have like the top grades for this, for this, for this. But there is no such thing as perfect, and it did get in my way a lot of times. And so I have learned lots of lessons about this topic because I've had to confront it in how I operate. And so why don't you talk a little bit about the fear of failure? Because I think it's a big piece of this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is totally right, that it can be, I mean, I'm also a firstborn and lived a highly perfectionistic, certainly in the academic sense, you got to get the best grades, you got to do the thing. And it even permeated into things like, my health and wellness and my nutrition. And actually I had, when I was in high school, had some issues with under eating. And, as I think many perfectionistic women do, it's at least in like sort of teenage and young adulthood, which was really challenging. But that was sort of how perfectionism played out in my sort of early adulthood. And now, my perfectionism can play out primarily with anxiety. It's like, anxiety is, your body telling you that it's under threat. And like my body, when I'm in a perfectionistic state, like conditions itself to think that like anything that is not perfection, any small not achieving a goal, or any criticism or anything like that, really, really gets in my way, because it can make me anxious. And, I know, Mindy, you and I read a book recently that talks about presence. And one of the things that it says in the book is like, you cannot be present when your mind and your nervous system are like in an anxious state, because it's just consumed by something else. And so that can play itself out too, where like we're striving to be perfect, but because we're so focused on being perfect, we actually can't be present in the moment and perform as well as we
won't even be good, let alone perfect.
Yeah. And just, to say another word about failure is like, we should not be afraid of failure. And in fact, if we are never failing, we are not dreaming big enough, and we're being too safe. And we should use failures as learning experiences. What did we learn about ourselves? What did we learn about the world? What did we learn about this process? I read a book recently, or listened to a book on Libby that's called Tiny Experiments. And one of the things she recommends is to take what she calls field notes, and to like set these sort of goals that are process oriented goals, where it's like, I'm going to do something for a certain number of weeks or months or a number of times. But then like take field notes in your everyday life about like how it feels, and think of it as a scientific experiment, because scientists like fail, right? Their hypotheses aren't proven all the time, and they're not afraid of it. Like it's just part of the process.
Yeah, I love that. And the interesting thing about failure is, for those of us who have these tendencies, and I mean, some people maybe love failure, I don't, and I have to confront it. But the thing is that it sounds cliche, but failure does teach you more than success. And what I want you to think about is this, is like, let's say, and this may not be true for everyone, but I think it's true for most people that I've encountered, which is, if you win, or you do well, or you achieve something very amazing, think about like how much time that lives in your head, and you think about it, or you call friends, or you tell your spouse, or you ruminate on it, right? And then think about when you fail. Like for me, when I fail, it's like, okay, I'm gonna like analyze every piece of it. I'm going to ruminate in it. I'm going to call everyone. I'm going to vent. I'm going to cry. I'm going to be like frustrated. But guess what? I actually learned from it, because I then say, I don't want to feel like this anymore. So I learn. And then I can go back and say, I can make a little bit of progress. And so how I've tried to confront not being scared of failure is like, it's where I learned the most, and all of us do. And it's just, your human brain is geared toward finding flaws and learning from failure, actually, because it does keep you safe. So it does, your brain's always picking up all these different signals how to keep you safe in the future. And so a failure actually teaches your brain, like, oh, don't do that again.
Yeah.
Right? If you touch a hot stove, don't do that again. It's
Yeah.
the same thing if you have a career failure or a personal failure, is you're likely to not do that again if you've learned the lesson. And so don't be scared of that. The other thing I want to say on this topic of like progress, over perfection, is we're not saying don't set big goals for yourself, but we're saying don't tie it to something that is so unachievable, or that where every condition has to be perfect. And I just thought of a book that I read a long time ago. It's called 10% Happier. And it's by a guy named Dan Harris. Dan Harris was, I think he was an ABC News anchor. And he was on camera live and he froze. He had a panic attack, like on the air. And he had like a mental health breakdown after that. And so he's been on this journey. He has the book 10% Happier. He has podcasts on it. But he talks about, like, I don't like these books that say like how to be happier. It's like, just be 10% happier.
Yeah.
Just be a little bit happier. And I tell that all the time, is like, just be a little bit better. Just try a little bit harder, or get to this goal in this small way, because that's actually how we make it through life. It's not these big moments where something huge transformation happens, because a lot of times we're waiting for that, and that's where perfection turns into procrastination.
Yeah, I definitely think that's true. Or perfection turns into, I'm just not going to do it anymore, right? Like, if you say to yourself, I'm going to post on social media once a week, or I'm going to go on a date night with my spouse once a week, and you get to the end of 6 weeks and you're like, oh, I've actually only done that half the time, instead of saying, oh, shit, I failed, like, let's throw in the towel. It's more being like, okay, maybe every other week is actually more sustainable for me. So let's change it to every other week. Or I think I can do a little bit better, but not every week. Like, let's do 3 out of 4 or try for that. And really thinking about, like, why did I miss those weeks? I mean, obviously it'd be very different for social media versus date night with spouse. And but just to give some examples, I think reevaluating is a learning experience to get yourself to the place where you're making 10% progress, or you're 10% more satisfied, as opposed to just saying like, oh, well, I failed. I'm giving up now. Because it's so easy to frame many things in life, that way, especially at the new year when we've set these goals for ourselves.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there's a workshop that I teach called Thinking Traps. And it's basically about a lot of human cognitive biases that really stop us from making progress. And one of them is called all or nothing thinking, which is, again, if I don't do it all the way, I should just stop doing it. And most people do this, right? You say, I want to do this thing, and you fail to post on social media once, or you eat poorly one day, or you miss a workout, and then you're like, well, I'm done. I can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
That is an actual, like, it's part of your brain. So you have to, like, see it, recognize it, slow down and say, no, I'm not going to do that. And it's interesting because I just told you, Lindsay, I gifted to myself a workout app for Christmas time. It's Arnold Schwarzenegger's app called Pump Club. So my endorsement is here, Arnold. If you want to, send tag, I will gladly wear it. But what I loved about it was when you join, there's like these articles that you read, and one of them was like, hey, if we're going to tell you what workout to do every day. And if you can't do it all, just do one set.
Yeah.
And then mark workout complete, even though you didn't complete the whole thing, because we want you to keep going.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's so interesting, because the day I looked at this was actually a day where I had very little time, and the workouts are like 30 minutes. And I was like, oh, like, if I just go get like one set done, that's better than nothing. And go up and I start doing one set, and I stay, right? And I'm like, okay, I can make the time. But I loved it because it also didn't say like, do one set and then it's okay. It said do one set and mark your workout as complete. Yeah. And I was like, for me, some reason that was like a really good framing, because it wasn't saying you failed. It was saying you still showed up, for that workout and did what you could for that day. And I like that. That really falls into this because I think a lot of times we want to do everything exactly how we think it should be or exactly in a certain way. And we have to give ourselves some space and grace to not always do everything 100%.
Yeah. And, most of the examples we've given to this point have been like, I want to do something a certain number of times or at a certain cadence. And what happens if I miss?
Mm-hmm.
But just sort of think of a different example is our podcast, right? Like what progress over perfection. So like we've actually been pretty consistent with our podcast in terms of like doing it on the weeks, every week, except for the holidays and times where we've intentionally missed. But I think that like, sure, we have been quote unquote perfect on the cadence, but like the reason for that is because at the outset, you and I were like, okay, so like we don't have time for video editing. We don't have time, to do like a 2-hour podcast. We don't have time. Like we knew ourselves well enough to know that like this was not going to be perfect. Like we don't have to. And we were actually just talking before we hopped on. It's like, I just want to not look weird. So hopefully we can do that.
Achieve that, we're winning,
I'm like, it's fine. I mean, and our screen grabs, like the screen grabs when we post, it's like,
there's 90%
of the time. But that's an example of like progress over perfection in a slightly different way, where it's like we want to be consistent, we want to stick to this, and so we are lowering the bar from like this insanely perfect podcast to like we're just going to hop on and chat about issues that are important to us and we think would be important to other women leaders as well.
Yeah, it's a great, and that's the thing is you can be consistent and that's not being perfect. But Lindsay and I, what we did is we were really honest with each other at the outset and said like, what are the things? And we were exploring it. And we were like, do we need to, does our background need to be the same? Do we need to wear matching clothes? Like,
yeah.
And some days one of us is rolled in here with no makeup on. Sometimes we roll in here and like we've come from a long day. And what we wanted to do was build this community with you all. And that was the important thing. It didn't matter. Again, like just let's not look super weird, but we're not beauty. I'm not a beauty queen. I mean, Lindsay's beautiful, but I'm not, that's not my life. Like, that's not my role, right? Like I'm a lawyer, I'm a consultant, like beauty is not my industry. But it was like, but I was scared to do this in the sense of like, oh, is everything that I like, how's it going to look? And what we've heard from people who watch this is they like it because we're just, they're learning things, we're helping them grow. And I think had we spent too much time making this perfect, we wouldn't have got started.
Oh, no. I mean, it would have been gone a long time ago.
I mean, because I've done these from clients' offices. Like I've done this like after teaching a 3-hour workshop, pop in and do a podcast, and you've done it from Colorado. And I think that, I think the lesson there is it's good to have a plan. It's good to have a goal. It's good to reach for consistency, but pick your priority. Our priority was consistency over the look. Because our sort of offering to the world is our knowledge, our wisdom, what we've learned and building this community. And that was more important than the other things that could go into a podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's shift briefly to talk about sort of like things like mindset shifts. And we've talked about a couple of them, but do you have any other thoughts on like mindset shifts, just to try to change the game a little bit in terms of not needing this perfectionistic standard all the time?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest one is start like auditing your thoughts on like where you have that all or nothing thinking and like write it down and start confronting that. I also think that relying solely on like motivation to get you somewhere is not the right approach. I think discipline and routine is what gets you there. That's why, like, if you're just like super motivated, I'm going to do this thing, but you run out of steam, it's because you don't have a routine or a discipline to support it. And so I would say those are a couple mindset shifts, is move away from just being motivated to, on the days when you're not motivated, the thing you're trying to accomplish is still part of your routine. So it's just going to happen. And then I also think that I will always say this, I think you should ask people closest to you, like for some feedback, like, how do you think I'm doing? Like, here's my goal. Do you think I'm getting there? Because we're very critical of ourselves. And when you talk to other people, you will get a different perspective of like, oh yeah, I've seen you making progress. I've said this on this podcast before, is that as a entrepreneur, very busy working mom, there was a period of time where I just was overwhelmed with life and work and kids, and I feel like I was way too fussy with my kids. And I told them like, hey, I don't want to fuss anymore at y'all. Like, I just don't, it's not me. It's not how I like to engage. And I asked for their feedback. And they have both shared with me over this year, like, oh yeah, you've made really good progress. Like they've seen the progress. I'm not perfect. It doesn't mean I don't have a day that I don't meet my own expectation. But I like getting feedback from people, because sometimes, if I do have a day where I'm fussy, I'm like, oh, the world's over, and like I'm the worst mom. But my kids are like, oh my gosh, you're doing so good. And that's okay. Like you're a human. And so get some feedback from people too. How about you? Any tips or tools?
Yeah. So, I mean, the field notes thing is, I love that. And another thing that she talks about is doing something called plus minus next. So, like, as you're evaluating something, like plus, like what went well, minus what didn't go so well. And then next, like, where do I go from here? And like, there's going to be stuff in all three columns, right? I mean, and so really reminding yourself to expect things not to go well. And I definitely agree, having people around you to sort of, I know, Mindy, one of the slides we use on presentations we give together often is who's on the board of directors of your life. And so really having those like trusted advisors that you can go to, and often it's your children or your spouse, or it's a colleague or a friend, to say like, how do you think I'm doing? And know that, like, someone where you're going to get a kind and loving but really honest answer for sure.
Yeah. Awesome.
Let's see. Well, so in terms of key takeaways, I mean, one thing I think we'd like to challenge folks is to pick one small thing you can do this week to sort of reframe progress over perfection as you start the new year. And let us know about it. We'd love to hear about it. Mindy, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely share your thoughts with us. Let us know how you're doing. But the other thing I would challenge you to do is write some of this down, so that you can, like the field notes. I love that. I love that framework. Lindsay, thanks for sharing that. But I would encourage you to start writing down some of the things that you're trying to accomplish, and really, measure that against, am I trying to make progress, or am I too situated in perfectionism that this is going to be a problem? And be honest with yourself, and then, be kind to yourself during the process. But I'm excited to hear about your progress. Please chat with us, on social media, reach out to us and let us know kind of how this conversation has helped you. And we'll continue to share tips like this going forward.
Yeah, love it. All right. Thanks, everyone, and Happy New Year. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.